in less serious news here, we've
funny.
got some of the early speculation for 2024 on the Democratic primary side. And first of all, it's extraordinary that it's even a question who the Democratic nominee will be. It's really more of a question on the Democratic side who the nominee would be than it is on the Republican side. If Trump runs, he is all but certain to be the Republican nominee. And in fact, polling bears out that he is in a stronger position as not the president currently with the Republican base than Biden is with the Democratic base, which is extraordinary in and of itself. But let's go ahead and put this Washington Post tear sheet up on the screen. So they have, these things are so silly, but they have ranked the top 10 Democratic presidential candidates for 2024. And in a gigantic snub to Vice President Kamala Harris, they have actually placed Pete Buttigieg in front of her in line. So top contender, they have President Biden. Of course, that makes sense. He is the incumbent president. You would think he would be a lock, but he's not a lock. But anyway, he's in the pole position there. Previously in this list, they had Kamala ahead of Pete, which also should be a no-brainer. Sitting vice president, I mean, very commonly throughout American history, of course, the vice president ends up going on to be the party's next nominee. But they make the case here, and I think not incorrectly, that she hasn't exactly delivered in the vice presidential role. Really, it's been an opportunity for her to highlight how not up to the task and not up to the job that she ultimately is. And listen, I'm no fan of Pete. I'm no fan of Kamala. Their politics are basically the same, which is a sort of like just pure ambition combined with standard issue neoliberalism. But Pete at least ran an effective campaign, whereas Kamala didn't even make it to the Democratic primary to have a single voter cast their ballot. The entire list, let me just read through the list and then we can talk more about Kamala and Pete. So 1 is Biden, 2 is Pete, 3 is Kamala, 4 they have Elizabeth Warren, LOL, 5 they have Amy Klobuchar, also LOL, 6 they have Roy Cooper, who no one is even ever heard of.
He's the Carolina governor?
He's the governor of North Carolina. Yeah, even I had to be like, who's that dude again?
I was like, I think that's the governor.
Right. So governor of North Carolina, who literally no one's ever heard of, Roy Cooper. Sherrod Brown, who, he's not like a crazy one to put on the list. They love this guy's profile, and he has good labor politics, which I really appreciate. He's sort of like a Midwestern populist figure, senator from Ohio, still wins in a state that has trended hard right in recent years. And, the thing with him, he took a pass last time around. And the thing with him is, like, on paper, he's kind of appealing because he can win in this tough state. And like I said, he's got this kind of like labor populist orientation that I find appealing. But then when you hear him speak, it's not he doesn't have a lot of natural charisma. Maybe that's a selling point. Maybe people like that he just feels like, a little bit less of the sort of polished politician. But anyway, that's Sherrod Brown. Number 8, Cory Booker. Why? Okay. Again, remind me how he did in the primary
2%.
Last time.
Remember, Andrew Yang beat him in order to get on the stage. Just don't forget.
Great. That's great. Good memory there. Yeah. Number 9 is even more perplexing. Gavin Newsom.
Yeah. Let's do the French Laundry guy. Cool.
Literally, who wants that dude? I mean, other than him.
Yeah, right.
He clearly wants to be president. Is anyone else interested? No, but that's the kind of person who makes this list. And number 10, AOC, who, I think has made it so that she is never going to be in a position to win a national election.
I don't even think she could win statewide.
I'm just going to be nice.
Okay.
So one of the things that I'll put in here that was interesting is they said, they were trying to figure out who might be the progressive, who might be the person that like the Bernie types could get behind. And let me read to you what they say here about Elizabeth Warren, who they kind of, put into that slot, even though obviously Bernie world not so much in love with Elizabeth Warren anymore these days. They say Sanders' camp has suggested Biden will face a progressive challenger in 2024, but exactly who would that wing of the party line up behind? Politico reported recently that top Sanders aides have gotten involved in setting up the field for 2024, but by pushing for Ro Khanna to run rather than by building up Warren. Sanders and Warren have often been allies, but their 2020 presidential campaigns got pretty ugly with one another. The senator from Massachusetts also has a re-election bid in 2024, which she has said she'll pursue. It irks me that there apparently is some effort from people around Sanders to kind of like put a candidate forward as if the grassroots base that supported Bernie wouldn't have something to say about that.
No.
And, there are plenty of things that we've praised Congressman Khanna for. I think he's been pretty good on foreign policy, but in recent weeks, he's been really, it's hard to distinguish his rhetoric from sort of the standard issue, Democratic lane, corporate Democrat lane of the party.
He's got the stock issue too. He's got the stock problem.
Yes, his wife has invested in these military industrial complex stocks, and he said basically, oh, that's fine. There's no problem with that. Spouses should be able to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
It's what are you doing right now? And he just gave an interview with Politico where he said that the problem with Build Back Better was that progressives didn't compromise fast enough or far enough with Joe Manchin, and that he didn't think that that Joe Manchin he seemed to indicate he didn't think Joe Manchin was corrupt. It was just an ideological difference, which again is at this point, when you've seen the money he gets from the oil and gas industry and the direct profits into his pockets from the coal industry, you still think that this dude is just acting in good faith? It's kind of absurd. So anyway, it irritated me that they would think that they could just foist a candidate onto a grassroots base and, think that they were going to just accept them without any question.
It's ludicrous. It's ridiculous also when you put it that way. It actually kind of reminds me sometimes of the MAGA wars when people are like, no, this is the real America first. And you have MAGA people around Trump who are trying to define what it means. And it's no, it just only Trump gets to decide. And I think in this case, even Bernie doesn't really get to decide, because at the end of the day, as we saw with Trump's endorsements, it doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
People are people. They think how they want. Many people who say they are Trump supporters say, look, I like Trump himself, but I'm not going to do everything that the guy tells me. And that's what bothers me also about the Sanders camp. I'm you don't speak for the Sanders movement. The Sanders movement, I think at its best, was an amalgamation and a coalition of a lot of disparate groups. We have people all the way from a Ron Paul libertarian perspective to the AOC identitarian wing, to the economic populist, the union folks, and then the Linda Sarsours and Tamika Mallory's of the world. It was always kind of a strange group of bedfellows, which is fine. I mean, that's what political movements are. Yeah, exactly. Many times they have internecine war and they don't agree on everything, but Bernie was able to speak to a very large group of people, and why I think he was probably the most successful progressive politician of my lifetime.
Well, he had a genuinely working class, young, working class, multiracial base. I mean, that was the core. I mean, remember when we used to look at where his donations came from? It was Starbucks workers and Amazon workers. And lo and behold, look at who is, has this grassroots movement now. So anyway, listen, it's also, this is how the Washington Post is spitting it, and it may not be totally accurate, but that sort of irritated me.
I think the main story out of this is that Kamala's number 3. I mean, that's what it is, which is that the Secretary of Transportation, who took time off while he was doing his clearly very important job, is the guy who is beating the sitting vice president of the United States. In Washington, I can guarantee you this caused a stir. I bet that she threw the newspaper, or if she still reads newspaper, I don't actually know.
Oh, she definitely reads this kind
I bet
of stuff.
She freaked out. And her comms director and all these people are absolutely how dare you, and threats are being made behind the scenes. So in that regard, this thing makes me smile, because you just know the Simone Sanders and all of them of the world are so pissed off watching Pete Buttigieg eclipse them. And look, these elite games do matter. Let's be honest. In terms of the DNC, in terms of the people in this town who matter, they all read that list and they all probably privately agree. It just shows you how awful of a politician that she actually is.
That's the thing, is if you're a candidate running to be in sort of the Bernie grassroots lane, this kind of crap really doesn't make a difference.
100%.
Do you think that there's a single Sanders voter who's the Washington Post says I should get behind Elizabeth Warren this time? No. But if you are trying to play the inside establishment game, these sorts of things do matter. And especially, this is sort of stuff that the donor class reads. I don't know if you all remember, we covered reports that there were already secret meetings of the billionaire and the 100 millionaire class to try to figure out how they could push Pete ahead of Kamala in line. But the bigger picture here too is just, they have apparently done one of these lists before, and they've always assumed, let's just take Biden out of it, because we assume that if Biden runs, he will be the nominee. But they actually go through this one and say, you know what, looking at the polling, that's not at all clear, because a YouGov poll recently found that only 21% of Democratic-leaning voters said Joe Biden would be their choice.
Yes.
21%.
Right.
So in the same poll, Trump had 43%. Not sure, undecided, had almost as large of a percentage as Joe Biden did. And by the way, so it was 18% who said they didn't know. And by the way, the next two in line were Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders, who each had 14%. Now, Bernie has all but ruled out running again. I mean,
look, he's too old. He's way too old.
Yeah. And, you know, he still seems like physically, mentally sharp or whatever, but he had a heart attack during the last campaign. So
listen, we cannot have an 88-year-old president.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, listen, if he ran, I'd still support the values and the vision, but I don't think he's on the table this time. But that basically just pointed to the fact that there is no consensus in the Democratic Party, that even the base of the Democratic Party is like, I'm not sure about Joe again. And they're like, and Kamala's not looking so hot either. So it is hard to understate how extraordinary it is to have a sitting Democratic president and have this level of total uncertainty about who the next nominee might ultimately be.
100%.
Blood in the water. It is really pretty wild. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.